560 The Answer.
Listen to AM 560 The Answer online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, and on TuneIn, iHeart, and on Odyssey. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson. America First with Sebastian Gorka, today at 3, right before Sean Thompson at 4 on AM 560 The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. At his CNN town hall yesterday, in front of New Hampshire Republican and undecided voters, President Trump was asked his position on the debt ceiling and what Republicans are doing in trying to extract reduction in spending going all the way back to 5 months ago. So draconian. Whether he thinks that what House Republicans are doing is the right thing or not. And here's what former President Trump had to say.
When we have a debt limit, and they use that very seriously to me, Schumer came in with Nancy Pelosi, and they were using it, we'll violate it, we'll do whatever. They talked a whole lot different than they do right now. I say to the Republicans out there, congressmen, senators, if they don't give you massive cuts, you're going to have to do a default. And I don't believe they're going to do a default because I think the Democrats will absolutely cave. Because you don't want to have that happen. But it's better than what we're doing right now because we're spending money like drunken sailors.
Is that what Republicans should do, this game of brinkmanship? Take Biden, Inc. to the brink? We put that to Brian Wesbury, Chief Economist at First Trust Portfolios, LP. Brian, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, Dan. Good to be with you this morning.
Great to have you. And, so on that debt ceiling, go to the mat on this one?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm going to disagree a little bit with the default talk. There is plenty of revenue coming into the federal government in order to pay interest and principal on our debt. So if you want to use the word default, it would be a choice of the Treasury, in a sense, to default because they have a list of things they have to spend on. They have to keep the Department of Education open. They have to pay Medicare. They have to pay Social Security. They have to pay all the operating costs of the government, and they have to pay interest and principal. Well, there's plenty of revenue to pay interest and principal, so they would have to cut back spending somewhere else. So I just don't like using the word default. By not raising the debt ceiling, it doesn't mean that we will automatically default on our debt. It just means we have to prioritize our spending in some other way. Now,
so even more reason for House Republicans to take this to the brink and extract some sort of slowdown in spending because, right, there's still money coming in to pay core obligations.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is where I agree with President Trump. They are spending like drunken sailors. The problem is that drunken sailors, at least they spend their own money. In this case, Congress is spending taxpayers' money. And the one big argument I hear all the time about this is, wait a minute, you can't vote for all these spending bills and then not raise the debt ceiling so that we can pay for them. Well, here's my problem with that. Every time we pass a spending bill, if you read the newspapers, you read the speeches of all the congressmen, the president, everybody involved, they all tell us it's going to reduce the deficit in the years ahead. The Inflation Reduction Act, that was scored by all the government accountants. That's what we call it, scoring. It was budgeted. It was planned out to reduce the deficit in the future. And it didn't. In fact, it led to bigger deficits. And so if all these bills really did reduce the deficit, they wouldn't have to raise the debt ceiling. So my fix for this is to not get rid of the debt ceiling votes and debates over time, because that's a check. That's a check on our government. They get to. They may look foolish. They may hate it, but it's a way that the taxpayers at least have another vote that Congress has to take, another public display of their spending like drunken sailors. But here's what they ought to do. When they pass a spending bill, they ought to raise the debt ceiling enough to fund it. And then if they have to raise it more after that, well, then there was some problem with their accounting in the first place. And that's the problem I have. Every time they pass these things, they tell us it's going to reduce the deficit, and every time it leads to a bigger deficit.
Yesterday, CPI, the Consumer Price Index, dropped a bit. Core CPI was unchanged at 5.5%, but this is good news on the inflation front. Is the Fed sticking the landing? Is this where we're going to have, as anticipated, another 0.25% hike by Powell next month, and then that'll be it, and the good times will roll again?
Yeah, we are in, Dan, I mean, we probably don't have enough time to go back and analyze it all. Let me just say that we did unprecedented things during COVID. I mean, in the true sense of that word, we never before locked down an economy. We never before printed and added to the economy as much money as we did. In fact, the money supply went up. Excuse me. Money supply went up by 40% during COVID, and that's why we have this inflation problem. When you print too much money, the value of money goes down. It's really not that your pizza costs more; it's that your dollar buys less. And it's because of the money printing that we had this inflation. It's not all about interest rates. And now, what's fascinating to me is that we've put all this money into the system. This created way more deposits in banks. Then banks had to turn around and take those deposits and invest them, and that's why these banks are now getting in trouble at the same time, because the Federal Reserve is lifting interest rates after they've shoved the banks full of new money that they created to kind of buy our way through COVID. And the result of all of this is the inflation that we're seeing. And so it may be true that now the bank problems are starting to reduce the money supply. The Fed is reducing the money supply. It may be true that they're going to be able to kind of tame this inflation beast. The problem is that it will come at a cost. It will come at a cost of these banking problems. It will come at a cost of a recession. And then if the Federal Reserve turns around and cuts interest rates and starts printing money again, the inflation won't have gone away. So a lot of people think inflation's going to come right back down to 2% and 1.5% where it was before COVID. I'm not one of those people yet. I want to see the Fed stick to this. The problem is when unemployment starts to go up, when a recession hits, and they ease again, that's what creates the long-term inflation like we had in the 1970s. So you can't use just the Fed to boost growth and then fix things, because it jerks the economy around. You get a boom in the economy and inflation, and then you get a bust. And every time they react to the bust, it kind of locks in that inflation. So I'm not willing to call victory over inflation yet. The Fed has more work to do, and they may raise. I think they probably will raise interest rates again, and I don't think the market's really ready for that.
So, is this just going to be a matter of time before this all corrects itself? 2 years, 3 years, and wouldn't we be in a recession for 6 months before they declare that we're in a recession?
Yeah, probably. This is the way I kind of think of the COVID era. We had a car accident, and we broke our leg in 4 places, and the ambulance shows up, and they pump you full of morphine, and then you go to the emergency room, and the doctor says, "Hey, how you feeling? We're about ready to fix that leg." And you go, "I feel great," and the doctor says, has to remind you, you feel great because you're on morphine. And so what we did during COVID is we borrowed $5.25 trillion and handed it out to people who weren't working. We printed over $5 trillion of new money, and that made us feel good. It made us feel like we could lock down the economy without many economic problems. But now what's happening is the morphine's wearing off. And I'm worried that will take us into a recession, and it's not just going to be a normal recession. We did unprecedented things, and we're going to pay a price that I think people are going to be surprised at how tough it's going to be. The morphine's going to wear off. Your leg is going to hurt. You're going to have to do physical therapy. I mean, this stuff, it doesn't get fixed overnight. And you can't add $5 trillion new dollars to an economy without paying a price. And that's one of the prices that we've already paid is the inflation we've seen, and it's not gone yet.
He is Brian Wesbury, Chief Economist at First Trust Portfolios LP. Brian, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Hey traders, listen up. With inflation, interest rates, and the recent banking crisis, are you nervous about what's coming next in the stock market? If you're ready to take control of your trading and predict trends instead of reacting to them, then Vantage Point is for you.